carry out.
You were kind of breaking up, Mike. I think your question was, do we have information that his death has disrupted a specific attack? Is that what you asked?
Yes, that's it. Yes,
I don't have information that suggests that, Mike, but I would remind that this was the leader of ISIS, and he was a very hands-on leader. He was involved in helping direct a lot of operations. So we have no doubt that his death will have a blow on ISIS and their potential to conduct future operations. I do want to remind that they are still a threat, and we're not. Nobody's taken, a victory lap here. We're going to stay at this. They still remain a threat. They still espouse this extreme ideology and this intent to kill, to maim, to terrorize, and so we're going to stay focused on it. Dan Lamothe.
Thanks for your time. Hoping maybe we can draw you out and flesh out some details on some of these tabletop exercises. It sounds like they went back at least as far as December, involving senior commanders and that sort of thing. Can you lay out a bit of what this looked like in terms of how far back it goes, who would involve, that kind of thing? Thank you.
Yeah, Dan, I'm not going to be able to go into more detail than I already have. Again, this was months in the planning, several months in the planning. It included actual physical rehearsals, as I said, dozens by the Special Operations Forces, as well as, you can imagine, some tabletop planning as well. But I don't have a tick-tock of exactly how all that process worked out. It was extensively planned, extensively resourced, and quite frankly, extensively informed over the course of several months. Jen?
John, if I could take you to Russia, Ukraine. There's a report that the U.S. has evidence that Russia has developed a plan approved at the highest levels in Moscow to create a pretext for invading Ukraine by falsely pinning the attack on Ukrainian forces that could involve alleged casualties in eastern Ukraine, but also inside Russia. It's being reported by the Washington Post. Is that report accurate? Has that intelligence been declassified, and what can you tell us?
What I can tell you is, first of all, we've discussed this idea of false flags by the Russians before. We've made no secret of that. And we do have information that it is that the Russians are likely to want to fabricate a pretext for an invasion, which again is right out of their playbook. One option is the Russian government, we think, is planning to stage a fake attack. by Ukrainian military or intelligence forces against Russian sovereign territory or against Russian-speaking people to therefore justify their action. As part of this fake attack, we believe that Russia would produce a very graphic propaganda video, which would include corpses and actors that would be depicting mourners and images of destroyed locations as well as military equipment at the hands of Ukraine or the West, even to the point where some of this equipment would be made to look like it was Western supplied Ukrainian to Ukraine equipment. This is just one example that we can talk about today. We're watching this across the board. We've seen these kinds of activities by the Russians in the past, and we believe it's important when we see it like this, and we can, to call it out.
This is being briefed on the Hill right now? Part of the Austin and Millie are on the Hill.
They're on the Hill in a classified briefing to talk about the whole spate of things we're concerned about with respect to Russia and Ukraine. It's a classified briefing, so I'm obviously not going to get into an agenda item with you here in terms of everything they're talking about. But they're both up on the Hill communicating with members of Congress what we're seeing writ large and what we're doing about it to help our NATO allies.
How do you know that it has been approved at the highest level of the Kremlin, this particular case?
I would just say that our experience is that very little of this nature is not approved at the highest levels of the Russian government.
And by that you mean Putin?
The highest levels of the Russian government. Kelly Meyer, News.
Hi, John. Thanks for taking my question. I have two, if I can. You mentioned the mechanical issue on the helicopter. Those involved okay, and any other issues we aren't aware of, or did everything run like clockwork? And the second, on the U.S. Army dismissing unvaccinated soldiers, are any of them the ones deploying or on high alert to deploy to Eastern European allies around Ukraine?
I refer you to the Army in terms of who they're discharging with respect to the vaccine mandate, but I suspect that there's privacy concerns there, Kelly. So I don't want to speak for the Army, but I don't know that they're going to be able to give you that level of specificity. It remains a lawful order. It remains a readiness issue. The vaccines work, and we want everybody to take them and to keep safe, to keep their units safe. As for the helicopter crew, my understanding is that they're all fine. As we said at the top, there were no U.S. casualties, and that would include the helicopter crew. And it wasn't a crash landing. They landed safely. Again, it was a drivetrain issue that rendered that helicopter unusable for the rest of the operation. So obviously it was destroyed, but the crew are safe and sound. Sylvie from AFP.
Hello, sorry. Can you tell us how many helicopters and how many U.S. troops were involved?
Yeah, Sylvia, I'm not going to answer that question, actually. Back when I opened up the press conference, I told you there's going to be some detail we're not going to be able to provide because we want to preserve our ability to continue to conduct these sorts of operations. So what I would tell you is that we had exactly the force levels and exactly the resources we needed to conduct this operation, and I'll leave it at that. Tara Kopp.
Thanks, John. Following up on Bob's question, can you confirm whether any sort of intelligence was taken from the compound, any computer drives or cell phones? And then secondly, to follow up on Louis' question, the decisions that were made in this raid, did they incorporate any lessons learned from the civilian casualty report done after the August 29th strike? Thank you.
I've kind of addressed that second question before when Louis asked it. I mean, we always try to avoid civilian harm. This operation was of a completely different character than the airstrike that happened on the 29th of August. But in general, we always try to learn from previous missions, from previous operations. These are two completely different operations, and the desire to avoid civilian harm was baked in months ago into this particular plan. In fact, the decision itself to conduct a raid using special operations forces speaks volumes of the degree to which the president was trying to avoid civilian harm, and quite frankly, putting our forces at greater risk because of the decision to make a raid like this. And I'm sorry, but I should have written your other question down, and I didn't do it.
Oh, about the, can you confirm whether any sort of computer drives or cameras or anything else were taken from the compound that could provide actionable intelligence moving forward?
Yeah, look, as I told Bob, I'm not going to get into talking about intelligence matters one way or the other. It is common practice when we conduct raids like this that we try to collect material that can help us and inform us in terms of our ability to disrupt future attacks and to conduct future operations. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Nancy Youssef?
Thank you. I wonder if you could clarify a couple points. On the explosion that happened on the 3rd floor, does the U.S. believe that the ISIS leader was wearing a suicide vest, or that it was an explosive separate of that, and was it one explosive? Can you tell us if there was any deconfliction that happened with any other nation? And can you tell us who will lead the review of any possible civilian casualties by the U.S.? Thank you.
There's been no decision to do a review or investigation right now, Nancy. This operation is not even 24 hours old. As the Secretary said, we certainly are willing to take a look to see if there's any possibility that anything that we did might have caused harm to innocent life, but I have no investigation or review to speak to today. As for the explosion, all I can tell you is what we've already said. There was a large explosion early on in the operation on the 3rd floor, which killed Haji Abdullah and his family. We believe he detonated that explosion. We cannot say at this time exactly what this device was. So I'd leave it at that. And then you had your first question. I'm not good at, I got to write these down. What was your first question?
Just to be clear, I was just asking, when you say that review, though, that you said the Secretary would be doing, I'm just trying to understand who would do that. And then the question was there any deconfliction with any other nations in the run-up to this?
So look, we're not calling for a review right now, Nancy. Again, this operation literally just happened last night. What the Secretary said in the statement was we're going to take a look and see if there's any possibility that any action that we conducted might have led to the loss of innocent life. And if there is, then we'll make decisions follow on that. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that there's an investigation in the offing here. That's not where we are at this point. As for deconfliction, I would tell you that appropriate deconfliction at the appropriate time was conducted in order to make sure that this operation could proceed safely. And I think I'll leave that there. Appropriate deconfliction, as happens in that part of Syria, was conducted in this case. Let's see, Helene Cooper.
Hi, thanks, John. Does this commando raid in Syria send a message of any kind to Vladimir Putin?
This raid was not meant to send a message to any other nation. It was meant to remove Haji Abdullah from his leadership of ISIS. And to that degree, it was successful. And we are immensely proud of the forces that conducted this, that planned it, resourced it, executed it, rehearsed for it. It says a lot about our capability in counterterrorism, our focus, our continued focus on the ISIS threat, and our ability to plan and conduct an execution of this magnitude and with this complexity, with the utmost of professionalism and skill, and quite frankly, secrecy. I'll take a couple more. Yeah.
Did U.S. forces collect any information or documents, whatever, materials from the building?
I've dealt with this question before a couple of times. It is routine that we try to collect useful material when raids of this kind are conducted. I'm not going to speak with any specificity about this one. Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. As you all know, according to the President's statement this morning, last night America delivered justice to the leader of ISIS and struck a serious blow to the terrorist group. Our entire nation is grateful for the patriotism of our military, personnel, and intelligence community. It was a successful strike. Strike was a strong step toward the fight against ISIS, but the death of this ISIS leader does not mean the death of ISIS. Congress remains ironclad in our commitment to our national security, and we will continue to work closely with the administration to defeat this terrorist state and keep America and our allies safe. Today, we are having previously scheduled classified briefing by the cabinet officers. At the beginning of that briefing, I have been told that we will have a briefing from General Austin, Secretary Austin, about the strike of last night. But it's so sad because this leader of the ISIS, maybe it's what they believe or whatever, but he decided that he would blow himself up and his children and his family with him as well. That's what happened last night. This week, it's a very happy week for us because that Competes Act is on the floor. It's a momentous one for the future of America's workers and the economy. And as the House passes the Competes Act, ensuring our nation is preeminent in manufacturing, in innovation, and in economic strength. It's about research. I want to salute our chair of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, Madam Chair Eddie Bernice Johnson, for the great work that she has done largely in a bipartisan way. I don't know if the votes will reflect that, but the bills that her committee, as well as some of them which passed on the floor, passed in a strong bipartisan way. Here's what we get here. We have always been a beacon of excellence in science and engineering and innovation in the world. And we invested in education and innovation and the rest. Then other countries copied our path. and they emerged as well. So we have competition now. Some of them, one, the People's Republic of China, a country of concern, threatens our ability to be as preeminent as we want to be. The technologies we rely on today and the technologies on the future must be made here in America. And this is what is happening in the Biden administration to make us more self-sufficient with American workers. It's an imperative for America's security and the financial security of America's workers and our families that we are self-sufficient. Competes meets this challenge, and I'm going to take the time to talk about Competes because it's a very, where is it? This is not the bill. This is just what we sent out about the bill. It's very intense. It's intensive. Competes meets this challenge first by investing $52 billion to support the manufacture of chips and semiconductors. Do you know how many chips are in an electric car? 2,000. Non-electric car, 1,000. But the absence of chips is hindering our manufacturing of cars. We need more chips, and we need them to be made in America. They are the lifeblood of modern technology, but are increasingly being made abroad, again, sometimes in countries of concern, leaving us vulnerable on supply chain issues. And that makes cost higher, and it contributes to inflation. We are bringing production back. So that's $52 billion, chips, semiconductors. Secondly, the CHIPS Act invests $45 billion to support manufacture and acquisition of critical goods or industrial equipment essential for our national security. And I'm going to read you this from here and hope that you would read this. It authorizes $45 billion for grants, loans, and loan guarantees to support supply chain resilience and manufacturing of critical goods, industrial equipment, as I say, and manufacturing technology. This is how it relates to our economy and our families. Supports the manufacturing or equipment acquisition of critical goods or industrial equipment that are essential for the national security and economic vitality. Critical goods include key components and products for public health, biological preparedness, information and communications technologies, energy and transportation sector industrial base, and agricultural commodities and food product supply chains. This is a magnificent piece of work, and I'm very eager. I'm very proud of the support it has had, as I said, in a bipartisan way. I don't know if that would be in the votes. So I told you something about that. I can talk more about it if you want. But we must continue to reduce our dependence on goods made in other countries, especially countries of concern, and bring production back home. Said one was the $52 billion for chips. The second was $45 billion for the supply chain. Third, and this is not about money, but with the bipartisan bills that are contained in this, we are advancing U.S. scientific research and innovation excellence to ensure that we lead the technologies of the future. And fourth, we're positioning U.S. interest and values to win on the world stage, holding the People's Republic of China accountable for using slave labor, which is a human rights issue and hurts U.S. workers. Okay, so again, more American goods made here at home, lowers costs and strengthens supply chains for America, ensures that America, not the People's Republic of China, writes the rules of the road for the 21st century. Speaking of the People's Republic of China, before I can, that's why I'm a few minutes late, I testified at and then listened to the testimony at the Congressional Executive Commission on China hearing. Tomorrow, the Olympic Games begin in China, and we heard from voices of the oppressed who spoke out on human rights violations being perpetrated by the host nation. While we fully support our athletes and have not called for a boycott by the athletes, we cannot be silent on human rights in China. We called for a diplomatic boycott, but not an athletic one. That's last year, called for no official U.S. presence at the Games, which President Biden has supported. Other countries have followed our lead. For example, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Belgium, Denmark, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Baltic states. Meanwhile, as Congress, I wish you could have heard the testimony, and it was live streamed, perhaps some of you saw, of the witnesses. They were so eloquent in representing every aspect of human rights violations, including genocide. But what's important to note and how it relates to economy is that when you talk about the Uyghurs and the camps that these people are sent to and the rest, when we talk about genocide, that would be enough justification to oppose what the PRC is doing, but it's not the only reason. What it does is say to American workers, you must compete with slave labor. And they were very eloquent in presenting how pervasive the cotton made in the Uyghur camps and the rest is, not only as a resource to perhaps U.S. manufacturers, but others as well. So this is not just a human rights issue, it's an unfair trade issue as well. Again, we are, of course, the subject at hand is the Omnibus Bill that Rosa DeLauro is brilliantly taking the lead on, setting us for a strong omnibus to address critical priorities for the American people. Right now, we are going back and forth with authors between the Democrats and Republicans, and we're hoping to reach a deal on a top line very soon on that. I know that's an issue that you're concerned about because that relates to schedule. And speaking of schedule, I am very proud that on schedule, our goal was to reach 1,000 infrastructure events. We're nearly 1,300 infrastructure. I think it's 1,271 infrastructure events so far around the country. Again, about bridges and roads and water supply, getting the lead out, broadband, issues that relate to safety on our streets, even some relationship to addressing the climate crisis. As we spread the word of our victories for the Democrats, we remain hard at work to help to pass BBB as well as voting rights. One connection between infrastructure and omnibus is that some of the money in the infrastructure bill cannot be freed up until we pass the Omnibus Bill. So for these and other reasons, to meet the needs of the people, to show that Democrats deliver for the people, and we want to do so in a strong bipartisan way, we have to get that. We're hoping to get that done as soon as possible in terms of the infrastructure bill. The Omnibus Bill. Any questions?
Madam Speaker, a new Instagram account called Dear White Staffers has been collecting troubling.
Excuse me, can we, if you got something extraneous, I'm happy to get to it, but let's talk. We're trying to keep government open. We're trying to be preeminent in the world, and I'm happy to come back to that. Any questions on what we're doing here? Jake, what do you got? What do you have?
I'm wondering about sanctions, Russia sanctions.
Yeah.
Where do you land? Are you for preemptive sanctions? What is your general thinking at the moment?
We have two bills, a bill in the Senate, the Menendez bill, and then in the House, Mr. Meeks's bill from his committee. They're on a similar path. There are those, someone on the Republican side who would like to have the preemptive, to have these sanctions first. Where I come down, and in keeping with the guidance from my committee chair, Mr. Meeks, and the administration, I think it's really important for us to use the sanctions if the Russians strike. It is important because it's where leverage is at maximum. If they do this, then we strike. It is where also most of our allies are on this, and that is a very important part of this, how we work jointly on it, and that is why I support using sanctions if they invade.
And how about, like, how drastic do you want sanctions to be if they invade? I mean, are you in favor of kicking them out of the SWIFT financial system? I mean, what do you see?
Well, the committee, I think they have to be very much more forceful than they have been, because we're talking about an invasion of a country. We're talking about NATO countries being at risk if the Russians succeed in Ukraine. So this is deadly serious. So they have to feel the pain, and it has to be felt right up to the richest man in the world, Vladimir Putin. Nobody knows what he's going to do except him, and that's why we have to be prepared for whatever that may be. But I do think that they have to be strong enough to be effective. They have to be done after and if they invade, and they have to be done in compliance with our allies working together. Yeah. Yeah.
On the January 6th committee, we know that their scope keeps getting bigger. We know they're looking at timelines leading up to the attack, where key people were and what they were doing and so forth. I wonder, have you provided any kind of testimony or documents to the committee?
No. I keep as far away from the committee as possible. If they asked me, I would, but I don't. I was on the podium, and then I was swept away.
Do you expect to be asked about things like
I had no idea.
Security or evacuation procedures? Or
I had no idea. I know about what they do the way you do in the public domain. We authorize them. We give them the resources they need to do what they do. But that is the work of the committee. It has nothing to do with me. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On that legislation by Congressman Meeks, once it's done and when it's ready, do you plan to fast track that, bring it straight to the House floor, possibly skipping markup? And then I just wonder if you can respond. We heard some comments from Senator Joe Manchin this week saying that Build Back Better is dead. I know in your previous press conference you referenced possibly that it could be renamed or rebranded, taking...
Well, you got a couple different questions there. Before you go on to a third, let me address the first two. First, well, we're going to be briefed. Mr. Meeks will be presiding on our side at the briefing, the Ukraine briefing, and we want to move quickly with these. Now, that'll be up to the chairman as to the process and the rest. But we want to be as close to the Senate bill as possible so there's no delay in getting something to the president's desk. The second part is I'm never giving up on BBB. There's so much in there that is really important in terms of child tax credit in terms of family health care for families, that is to say not just children but seniors or siblings with disabilities and the rest, with universal pre-K. This is it's about lowering cost for the American people, lowering the cost of health care, lowering the cost of child care, lowering the cost of family care, lowering the cost of education at the pre-K level, and we must get something done. And of course, a very important part of it is what we're doing about the climate crisis. And there are plenty of things in there where I think that we can find common ground. So I'm not giving up on the PPP.
Potentially, I know you mentioned it could possibly remain.
That's incidental. I mean, what's important is what's in the legislation. Lowers cost, increases pay, and is completely paid for. So one other thing about it is when we talk about inflation, people say, oh, you're spending money on this or that. This is completely paid for. Not only is it paid for, it will, in fact, reduce the national debt because it is, we raised so much more money because we thought we were going to do so much more. So I'm very, we cannot abandon it. We must proceed. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Speaker, just continuing on Ukraine, I know you have the briefing coming up shortly, but do you have any knowledge or concern about reports that Russia could some type of false pretext to attack? It appears U.S. officials may have evidence to that.
Well, I don't want, we'll get our classified briefing and be more up to date on it. But the fact is, there are troops amassed at the eastern border of Ukraine. Whether it is imminent or not, we have to be ready for it whenever it is. And again, we have concerns that we share with other NATO countries in the region. So we have to be prepared. What we hear is no one but the man himself knows what he's going to do. And I'm very pleased that our Secretary of State has engaged in diplomacy, because diplomacy deterrence is what we want to see succeed. Diplomacy deterrence. The Secretary Blinken has been forceful in that engagement, but that engagement also, in order to be good peacemakers, you have to show that you can be a good fighter, I always say. So we'll see. But in terms of their intention, I have nothing to share with you about the intelligence on that here.
Good morning, thank you.
What do you got?
Good morning, thank you. So, follow up on Ukraine and Russia here. Obviously, last summer the House
I'll take you now.
approved to revoke the AUMFs from 01 and 02 here. 02
Yeah.
Senate. But there has been some concern by progressives in the House, Barbara Lee, who was the only one who voted against the Afghanistan resolution in 01, saying we should lean on diplomacy first. Are you concerned about the military moving these troops, even though they're not going to have boots on the ground, and what the concerns are about members of your caucus who say, we just repealed these AUMFs, what is Congress's role as it pertains to war powers to be involved in moving these troops forward in Europe?
Well, you have a multifaceted question, but the fact is we have to do a new AUMF authorization for the use of military force. What is there is stale, old, and we have to do it. It's challenging because you have to decide on many things. The authorization for what? What is the purpose? What is the scope? What is the timetable? And what is the geography? And that's why we haven't had another one since, because we have to come to agreement on that.
Would it pertain to something like this, what we're seeing right now in Eastern Europe?
To moving those troops? I don't think so, no.
Well, but why not?
Because they're. No, I don't think it does. I don't think we need an AUMF for that in terms of the scope and the threat that is there. You don't have, nor do I, a definition of what the purpose of those troops there are. They are a confidence builder for our allies in the region, and they are, if if need be, where we go next, we'll make some judgment. But right now, just to move those troops, no. Your question.
Do you support staffer attempts to unionize here in Congress?
Well, we're just unionized at the DCCC, and I supported that. Yeah, I supported that.
I have a question about the. So I'm wondering, in the bill, the Competes Act, it actually it tries to increase cooperation with China to address climate change. So I'm just wondering, how can you ensure that while increasing that cooperation, you can also be sure that the Chinese Communist Party is taking the sanctions in Xinjiang seriously and not try to get around those sanctions?
Well, we are very serious about the Uyghur legislation that we passed in a bipartisan way. Senator Rubio and Chris Smith on the Republican side, Senate and House, Jim McGovern, Congresswoman Wexton, Senator Merkley, and others. This has been bipartisan and bicameral. So nobody should be misunderstand how serious we are about that. When we pass the appropriations bill, we'll have the funding to fund our follow-up on checking on what companies might be using products coming from prison labor camps, making our workers compete with prison labor. The Chinese, we certainly, I've taken second place to no one in this Congress in my criticism of China for over 30 years, since Tiananmen Square, when I first came to Congress. And I fought them every step of the way on trade issues, on human rights issues, and on proliferation of weaponry and delivery systems over the years. I also have worked with them on issues that relate to climate. I've been to China on that very subject, where we have seen what they have been doing. They deserve credit for many of the things they were doing in terms of climate, but they still remain a major emitter, as do we, and we all have to do better. But we have made our decisions. It's in their interest. It's in their interest because they have a pollution problem that is a health issue there, and that becomes a political issue as well as an economic issue. So again, we cannot say, because we hope you'll do something on climate, that we can ignore the fact that you're committing genocide of a population in your country. That's just not going to happen. And I said, and I'll close with this, and that is that I've said it all the time. In fact, I've said it in Dharamsala with His Holiness the Dalai Lama standing right next to me. If we ignore human rights abuses in China because of commercial interest, then we lose all moral authority to talk about human rights any place in the world. What does it profit a person or a country to gain commercially and suffer the loss of its soul? We cannot do that. So again, let's have a balance in all of it. Recognize we share this planet, that we hope that we can work together with them diplomatically on climate where we have common ground, but we will not and cannot. They say, the Chinese, they say, and torturers generally say, the most sinister form of torture to a prisoner of conscience is that they say to them, nobody cares. They don't even remember you. They don't even know you're in jail or why. So why don't you just give it up? Well, we do everything we can to make sure that they know that we are publicizing these names, as we did this morning. Once again, not only us, but the witnesses who came reading the names of others. So again, what the Chinese are doing to these people and their families, if their families, for example, testify that their loved one is being imprisoned endlessly for practically nothing, it's active cowardice on the part of the Chinese government to take it out on the children and families. And these Uyghurs, they send these people to these camps and then they take their children. I mean, this is diabolical. It's diabolical. So again, for over 30 years, I've been making that fight. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be. We work together on the Iran nuclear agreement. We can work together on climate issues. We can try to find common ground where we can, but that does not negate our commitment to our values. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
What happened to your 49ers?
Oh, don't break my heart. Don't break my heart.
You didn't congratulate me on my
I thought he
Bengals.
should have taken the sack. I coach on the side, you understand. And they should have gone for the 1 yard. But and nonetheless, nobody expected us to be where we were. And I'm very proud of 49ers 10 season ticket holders forever. On the other hand, the Warriors that held us proud this week so far. We'll see where we go. And the most recent game, not last night we didn't play, night before, no Steph, no Clay, no Draymond, no Wiggins, and we still won.
Did you want a Bengals 49ers Super Bowl again?
I was there. I was there in Miami with my family, my kids and all. No, they were little then. It was a long time ago. It would have been good. So we'll see how it goes. Of course, I'm in California, so I'll be rooting for the Rams.
Thank you.
Before they entered the door. Yesterday you said that they were loudly announcing their presence and knocking at the door before, but that didn't happen. We saw it all in the video.
Right. So in the video, they open the door with the key and announce police search warrant before they enter the apartment.
That's not true. If you go back and watch the video, they do not say until they cross the threshold of the door. It's just not true.
I definitely encourage everyone to view the video and make that assessment for themselves.
Is it true that officers are only to speak one at a time when they come in? In other words, is that police training 101 that only one officer speaks? In these circumstances, why were all of them screaming and shouting at once in ways that you could not determine what they were actually even saying?
So certainly when we're doing a more controlled action, like a felony stop, we clearly identify one person to be speaking. In this case, the officers were advancing into the apartment and also into separate rooms. And so you do have people giving commands, loud commands, and repeating police search warrant, police search warrant.
Chief, yesterday in your statement, you specifically articulated that he pointed the gun in the direction of the officers. You did not use that language just now. Can you point to specifically in the video where he points the gun at the officer?
Yeah, so if you look at that still image, even though you don't see all of the officers, the involved officer was just outside the frame in the direction that that barrel is emerging from the blanket.
But it looked to me as if that gun in Mr. Locke's hand was pointed toward the floor.
And certainly when the county attorney's office reviews that case, they will be carefully examining all of those factors, and I'm absolutely positive they will take a look at that. Of course, we all know these events happen very rapidly, and as there's a gun emerging in your direction, you're forced to make a split-second decision about when it's a threat.
Chief Huffman, no, hold on. Chief Huffman, no, do not. Okay, I'm not a threat. I don't have a gun. Okay? Don't treat me like I'm a threat. This is what I would call the anatomy of a cover-up. This is unacceptable. I'm sorry, it is. When I agreed to work with you on the work group, we talked about the importance of transparency and accountability. And here, what we are seeing is business as usual. And you know this, Amelia. You know this, Jacob. I don't know how you guys slept that night. I couldn't sleep at night. Tears from a mother's perspective, thinking about what happened. I saw the picture of Amir. He looks like a boy. My son is 17 years old. He has slept on his friends' couches for sleepovers. So we cannot sit here and whitewash this and pretend that it's okay. You knew that I was not going to stand for police violence and a push for accountability, yet you asked me to be a part of the work group, and I knew what I thought I was signed up for. This isn't what I signed up for. I understand if you're not comfortable having me continue to co-chair, that's your prerogative. I signed up to help bring recommendations because we're tired of being killed. We're tired of the cover-ups. We're tired of the excuses. And to hide behind the St. Paul Police Department, the deadliest police force in the state of Minnesota, is unacceptable. You all had no business agreeing to carry out a warrant, and now you're claiming that's part of their investigation. You don't know. Well, why the hell did you all sign up to do this in the first place? There was a homicide that happened at 1-something in the morning on Hennepin Avenue. Someone was killed, and then the person drove away in a black SUV. They're still at large in Minneapolis, potentially a threat to residents. But you all go do something for St. Paul Police, and now you're trying to hide behind that decision. It's not acceptable. We are ready for change. When the people voted to re-elect you, Jacob, they not only showed that they wanted to see a new leader, right? And not saying you're not the person who got reelected, you got reelected. But what they were expecting is a new beginning. That's why they gave you more power and authority. So that is what we want to see as the residents of Minneapolis. We don't want to see cover-ups. We don't want to see whitewashing. People are asking very simple questions that have still not been answered. Amelia, you're saying you want to be the chief? Then act like it. Demonstrate integrity. Don't cover up for what those cops did. If they knew that the kid had a gun as he started waking up, say, drop your weapon. They didn't do that. One cop opened fire and took the life of a child who was trying to go back into his blanket. Any mom can see what happened there. So I can't tolerate the whitewashing. I'm sorry, y'all. We can't do this. I know you have your narrative. I know you have your script. And no, you guys didn't personally go shoot somebody. But you do have the opportunity to make it right, to talk about the fact that you changed the no-knock warrant policy. Where's the evidence of that? That wasn't present on what happened to Amir Locke. So if I'm going to be the co-chair of this group, I'm expecting strong leadership, I'm expecting integrity, and I'm expecting accountability. Yes. You guys aren't going to waste my goddamn time. And I don't care, you guys had your security trying to stop me. I can be used to come speak the truth about what needs to happen, but when it's time to call out these inconsistencies, these inaccuracies, the lack of information, I got to sit in the back or even not even be invited. I'm not here for it. We fought too long, too hard. There's people in jail, including Cortez Rice, trying to get the court to show what's happening in the courtroom so people can see what's going on. People have put their lives on the line because we're ready for change. So we're expecting from this point forward for you guys to do something different. I'm not playing. We're not here for it. We're not here for it. I'm only committed to working on this work group if you all are committed to being honest and transparent and not covering up the bullshit. Thank you.
Why did you release pictures of his gun, but no pictures of the gun of the officer who killed him? Why have you not released that information? You know, this man did not shoot anyone. He did not discharge his weapon. Why did you release his gun? That was a disgusting vilification of this man. That is inexcusable. It is utterly disgusting that you would release a picture of his gun, even though he never fired his weapon. And you know he didn't fire his weapon because you have both seen the video. This is the kind of lack of transparency that Nikita is exactly talking about when you send out these sensationalistic pictures of his gun, a man who has never committed a crime, but you don't release the video, or rather the pictures of the officer's gun.
So, Ms. Gross, thank you for being here. And Ms. Levy-Armstrong, thank you for your strong words. You acknowledged and rightfully pointed out that at this moment in time, we need accountability, we need leadership, and we need transparency. You asked whether we wanted you to continue as co-chair. The answer is yes. We are dead serious about seeing the necessary changes through, and the necessary changes start with being honest and transparent. That begins with all of you here today and releasing body camera footage in the immediacy so that people can see exactly what is in it, good, bad, or ugly. But it doesn't stop there. It goes on to getting the necessary facts of the case, and I know, speaking from experience, that there is an ongoing tension between getting things out quickly and getting things right. We want to get things right. We want to, excuse me, we want to gather the necessary evidence to make sure that we are not telling you something that is inaccurate.